In the last lesson, what did we cover? We covered a teacher's own assessment plan that they need to cover. And we have also gone through the implementation plan. And now we are going to look at the challenges that you can face when you are implementing assessment. Yeah, that's what we're going to do today. So one thing that you have to realize and keep in mind, okay, I think somebody was writing, but they never posted. But anyways, we need to concentrate. So today we're going to look at the challenges that we may face when we are implementing assessment. All right, there are many challenges that we face when we want to carry out a successful implementation, but some challenges have detrimental effects. So some are very detrimental in the sense that they can have a huge negative effect, while some are minor when they are faced or when they are experienced. All right. But even if some are minor, they can still affect the learners. They can influence the learners in some ways, and then in the process affect the learners' performance on assessment. Okay. Today we are not going to look at setting and marking question papers, but we'll look at the following issues. Mainly, we have got the principles on how to keep perspective when you're assessing, like just how to keep focusing on what's important, ensuring objectives are attained, analysis of and the use of results, reporting of results, and ethical consideration when we are implementing assessment. All right. We are moving on to the first one. The first principle is principles of how to keep perspective. When it comes to change, change is always happening when it comes to assessment. All right, we know that. And change is good, but it must not be viewed in the backdrop of stability. What we consider important about test reliability and validity has not changed much over the last few decades. We know that over the few decades, reliability and validity in assessment is still important. It has not changed. The definition has not changed. Despite the increasing presentation of tests by computers, okay, nowadays we have got so many tests on computers, and vast majority of classroom assessments still, vast of them still involve pen and paper test, which is true, especially for you guys as fourth year students. But I don't know how it's gonna end up at the end of the year. But for the most part, for the fourth year students, it's advised that students take a pen and paper examination, right? But then again, I think it's the same thing when we in schools. Still, unless it's some private school with great softwares that they will allow students to write the final examination, for example, mock examination, external examination online. But for the most part, still, our our learners take the pen and paper assessment. And then, although reports of accountability and legal issues about the test are written in the media, our concern as teachers still needs to be on whether the learners know what we have presented to them and they understand what we have presented to them. So the bigger picture has more stability than change, all right? Because even if assessment change and evolves, our main focus is always on what the learners have learned, what they can do with what they have learned, and if they have really understood what we have taught them, all right? And thus, as teacher, being aware of the changing trends in assessment, we must still keep the perspective of what to assess and how we are assessing. All right, so that's what we have there. Now we are moving on. So we are moving on to the next aspect, which is ensuring objectives are attained. So in the previous lessons, in one of the previous lessons, or some of the previous lessons, we've spoken about the distinction between goals and objectives. And I'm not going to get into too much details of that because we have spoken extensively about them. So what you need to remember is that the goals between there is a difference between goals and objectives. All right. And then we have spoken that the goals are more generic. All right. They are more general in their writing. All right. And then and as we can see here, it's like there are statements indicating general area to be covered in an education. All right. And then goals do not indicate exactly what must be covered. So you should keep that in mind. But then when it comes to objectives, they are more specific. All right. They will state exactly what must be attained. So example here, we have got an objective that can be found in an English lesson, that learners should be able to write a letter to the press. So that is more specific. And then goals and objectives are not only here to indicate the knowledge that need to be acquired, but it must also include the domain of cognitive. Cognitive is in a way, connected to knowledge. And then not only cognitive and the knowledge, as I mentioned there, but the objectives should also cover the domains such as affective, which has everything to do. What is affective about? Anyone? Affective and psychomotor. Affective is about?
Maybe emotions?
Yes, it has everything to do with emotions. How about psychomotor? And values, yes. How about psychomotor? Affective has to do with attitude, emotions, values, yes, all that. And then how about psychomotor? Yeah, physical skills. All right, good. So psychomotor is a domain that includes physical movement, coordination, the use of motor skills, like the movement, the physical movement. And then the development of these skills require practice and is measured in terms of speed, precision, distance, procedures, or techniques in execution. So it has everything to do with the movement of the body, the physical movement, coordination. All right, so that's what we have there. So our objectives should also cover those areas and not just about the knowledge. Not just about the knowledge. But then I have to mention that, again, for most of us, when we get into schools, we really have no power over the objectives and the competencies that we cover in the classroom. Why? Because the syllabus is already created for us. Okay, and then it's just for us to follow the syllabus. And another point I wanted to make is that, or I hope in the future somehow, when these objectives are being created, because right now the syllabus is out and it's going to go for a few more years. But in the future, I really would love to see the involvement of teachers as well in the creation of these objectives, of different stakeholders, not just a few stakeholders. But anyways, I am not sure who exactly is being consulted when they are creating the objectives. But in the future, I really hope, with the newer and younger people coming into leadership, that they see the need to involve the teachers when it comes to creating objectives. Yeah, that's just a thought. Anywho, we are moving on. So to think about objectives, we can think about them in terms of the Bloom taxonomy. We have spoken about Bloom taxonomy before. And in these lessons, in this module, they still have included the older version of Bloom taxonomy. And we have spoken about that already. And the older version, we've got knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. However, on Bloom taxonomy, the newer version, we have got creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and remembering. All right, and that's how we get to think about the objectives of the lessons. Now, we are going to look at guidelines for preparing objectives for the lesson. As I've mentioned, when we are preparing the objectives, for the most part, they are already written in the syllabus. We do not have to put in so much work to creating new objectives, unless they allow you at the school that you're going to work to modify them. All right. But anyway, just keep that in mind. The syllabus stipulates already the objectives that we have to cover in the classroom, and we have to stick to that, because in the end, at the end of the year, at some point, the learners will be assessed in the same way, especially during external examination. Next, distinguish carefully between instructional processes and learner learning objectives. So how you instruct, and then the objectives that the learners need to attain. And then you need to try and strike a balance between generality and specificity in the statement of the objectives. But then again, like a point like this one, we really have no control over how the objectives look like, because they are in the syllabus. All right, the syllabus is given to us to execute in our lessons. And then use specific and action-oriented words to describe the objective. And most of them, I haven't really seen all the different subjects syllabus to see the objectives, but the one that I'm very familiar with is like the one for English. And some of them really have used the action-oriented words to describe the objectives. All right. The action-oriented words are like... I had another slide, but it's not showing right now, but I'll include it in the notes, that shows the action words that you can use when you're creating the objectives, but also when you're creating your lesson activities, you can use those verbs, okay, to guide you when you are when you are setting up your activities, because objectives, for the most part, we have really no control over. Okay, and then articulate your objectives with external sources when appropriate. Only when you are instructed by your syllabus. Honestly, now if we are to face the reality that we face in our classes, that we have to encounter in our classes. And then next, never omit an objective because it seems difficult or impossible to assess. The truth is, some of the objectives might seem really daunting, hard, and as I mentioned here, difficult or impossible to assess, but it doesn't mean that you should omit them. Get help, all right? Get help. Be realistic in them. If you know that you can't attain it, consult someone within your school if you are teaching the same subject with a number of teachers, or somebody outside your school. Your classmates, or even the subject advisor. I feel like you can contact them for help, all right? And periodically review your objectives, all right, if you have really attained them or not. So you have to go through that process of reviewing them, okay? And then share the statement of objectives with your learners, and that's what they encourage you to do. When you see the the TP lesson evaluation form, there is points for you when you have mentioned the objectives at the beginning of the lesson. So which means that you have to let your learners know what objectives are they going to cover in the classroom. And the parents here and colleagues, when opportunities present themselves for you to talk about the objectives to the parents, by all means do that. And your colleagues, when that opportunity comes, when it's necessary, then you share them with with the parents and the colleagues. All right, now we are moving on to the next topic. And the next topic is on administering the test and analyzing results, because this has to match. This is not proper English. Minister tests and analyze results, or administering tests and analyzing results. But anyways, that's just that. So what you need to keep in mind is you return the scores of the students promptly, all right, as soon as you can. Okay, you can try that. Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate. And then we're returning the results. Then we're returning the test. Refrain. So avoid announcing individual scores. All right. Don't call Peter and then you say 70%, and then Suzanne is 30%. I mean, that is embarrassing, so don't do that. Allow for learners question to do some explaining. Oh my gosh, what kind of English is that? Oh no, we're sitting here. Explain the score and where the marks are deducted. So when they have points in, when there are times when there are marks deducted, then explain that, and the scoring also explain that. And then also allow the learners to ask their questions regarding their tests. All right. And then record scores after you have reviewed the test with the learners in order to correct any mistakes. I mean, most of the times what happens is that you can miscalculate. I mean, if you have 50 learners from 3 or even 2 classes and you mark them all at the same time, and when you calculate, you might miss out on certain marks, right? So to avoid just writing the score that you have after the learners have gone through the test and they've counted their points, and if they tell you that there might be some mistakes in the calculations or how you mark them, you correct that and then you change the mark on the score sheet. All right, so that's what you need to do. And there's a comment made by Martha. A lot of teachers like announcing learners marks back in school. That's true. They like to do that, but you're going to be different. Don't do that. All right, because we want to create confidence in the learners. All right, we don't want to break them. We don't want them to, even hate each other just because of marks. Because it's the 21st century. What we are creating is collaboration and not so much of competition. Competition is needed, but it's not always. All right, because we'll be working together. Things are changing now. The soft skills are necessary, and let's avoid breaking our learners down. Next. So after administration, the analysis of the results, specifically the item of assessment, follows. So item analysis refers to the collection of techniques to examine the quality of the individual tests. So that means that after you have administered your test and you go through the scores of the learners, you also need to look at the quality of the items that you are using. Maybe you notice that all the learners have passed, even the learners who struggle have passed the test with really high points. Then maybe through that type of analysis, all right, you get to see, you gotta review your test items. Test items are the test questions that you have written in your test or assessment, and then you assess them to see if the question might be very easy, okay, or in situations where most of the learners have failed, even the seemingly best performing learners have failed, then maybe you can also review the test items just to see the quality. And then these are the two reasons to be familiar with techniques. So why you need to have the techniques to review the quality of individual test items. So it serves as a frequent point for reference for external tests, such as SAT. And then teachers can use simple version of these techniques to examine their own test results, and this can lead to improvement of results. Right? So it's really necessary for us to go back to our test, read our questions again, and see if maybe they are vague, that it might be difficult for the learners to answer, all right? Or maybe they are, I feel like vagueness and using difficult words that the learners may not understand might affect how the learners have performed. So these are some of the things that you have to look out for. Or you give them a multiple choice questions, but then there are a number of answers, the choices that are very, very close closely related that can cause confusion. So those are things that you have to look out for when you are reviewing your test items. And then best uses of item analysis of the classroom assessment. So indicate whether the assessment task functioned as you intended it to. All right, so you have to ask your question that. So that is now the techniques when you are analyzing your test items. All right, provide learners feedback on their performance and provide a basis. Is that a basis or basic? Just give me, yeah. And then provide a basis for classroom discussion. So you can have a discussion on their performance. So if you see that there is a certain question that most of the students have, learners, you are students, they are learners. So most of your learners have been struggling with, then you can have that as a basis of discussion. All right, so maybe it's an area that they really did not get, and then you can go through that. Providing the teacher feedback about the learners learning. Providing the teachers feedback about the learners deficits. Wow, I'm kind of hungry. Never mind. Learners deficit. So also provide deficit. I mean, like, so these 2 points are kind of related. So when you see that there is some, lack, there is some deficit, like something, I mean, learners are failing a certain question. So there might be some learning struggles that the learners are facing. So talk about that, and then also help them encounter whatever learning difficulties they might be facing, and then suggesting areas of teaching improvement. And it's through this now when you are analyzing the classroom assessment through the performance of the learners, you can also see what area in your own teaching needs to be improved. All right. And then suggesting how the assessment task may be revised. It's through this analysis of classroom assessment, then you get to see which tasks need to be revised after you have seen, okay, maybe certain questions were too broad, the selections were, maybe the selection points were too similar, or were too obvious of what the wrong question is, which means it does not really allow the learners to think about the question as much or the content as much. Then some of those you need to revise because you might want to use them again. And then helping the teachers, the analysis also helps the teachers to improve their skills in setting assessment tasks. So this analysis will also tell you, maybe you then notice that maybe you struggle with setting up multiple choice questions, and with that knowledge, then you get to educate yourself on how to set up multiple choice questions appropriately or correctly. All right. So through this analysis, you get to do all this. All right. Next, analysis for selective items. So when you are working with selective items, learners choose during selective items, learners choose correct answers from possibilities. For most of the time, like let's say if it's a multiple choice question, then you give them 4 options from which they will choose the correct one. Matching, for example, make sure that in matching there is an extra point that does not have, let's say you have got 5 definitions, 5 words that you need to match with definitions, right? So you have 5 words, but definitions needs to be 6 extra, all right? That makes it a little bit more challenging, and the learners cannot guess. And then there should be 1 correct answer, and the scoring is very easy. Okay. Also called objective score, only 1 correct answer. So which means when you are doing all this multiple choice or matching or whatever, filling in the blank, but they are given options, there should be only 1 correct answer. Don't have multiple answers that are going to be possibly correct. And then during the selective items, no reasoning is required. Okay, excuse me. Next, when it comes now to analyzing subjective scores are the opposite of the objective scores. All right. Subjective scores appear when items have wide range of possibility or of possible points. Okay, they have more possibilities in their answers. All right, and probably there is no subjective judgment required for scoring. So there's no subjective judgment required for scoring. Probably some. All right, some there might not be, but then they always suggest that you use scoring rubrics, for example, to lower reliability. All right, so you need to use the scoring rubric, because if you don't have that, depending on how you feel, you might grade the learners differently. All right, but you have to use the rubric. Now we are going to look at the assessment of relative achievement and assessment of absolute achievement. When you're talking about relative achievement, this is closely related to norm reference assessment. Do you remember the norm reference assessment? Yes or no? Oh, yes, you do. Okay, Martha does. Okay, Simon is still writing, but okay, we'll read his comment soon. So the assessment of relative achievement. So mainly on the when it comes to relative achievement, here we compare learners to other learners, and then we rank them according to their performance with others. Compare learners' achievement with other learners. Exactly, that's correct, Simon. All right. So mainly here, mainly on the rank order of learners with respect to what they have learned, but you rank them to what they have learned, but you compare them with other learners, so you rank them in that manner. But then when it comes to absolute achievement, is now the opposite of relative, which is closely related to criterion reference assessment. So focus mainly on the accurate description of the content of performance of performed responses. All right. Assessment of individual items concerned when attempting to diagnose learners' learning problems. So when you are looking at the individual items that you have used in your assessment, then it will give you an idea of what are some of the difficulties that the learners are encountering within the topic that you have covered. Okay, whereas a relative achievement is more concerned in ascertaining a learner's general educational development in an area. Okay, the general achievement in an area, and then we compare them with other learners. Okay, so far we have covered the principles of how to keep perspective, and we have looked at ensuring objectives are attained, analysis and use, there we go, of results. And then now we're going to look at reporting of results and ethical consideration. So I don't know how far we're gonna go with this because we only have 10 minutes left, but we'll try by all means to cover everything. If you have any questions, please do ask your questions now. All right. Reporting of results. We as teachers, we need to keep in mind, we need to be competent in the grading process, know the grading and reporting options. All right, as a teacher, you need to know that. Like, how do you grade? You need to know that process. And for some of the examination, for example, for some of the syllabus, they have given you at the end guidelines on how to assess certain aspects of the paper that you're assessing. But hopefully too, when you get to the schools, the head of departments or the head of subject head will guide you in that process if you are struggling on how to assess. Okay. All right, there's a point there that, but I think announcing learners' marks motivate them sometimes. Yeah, it has a place, but do it with caution. Just make sure that you don't. If you have a learner who constantly get lower marks, I don't know how motivated that is gonna be. It might be discouraging. it might be really discouraging. But again, use your common sense when you are doing this. Just see their reaction as well. If they get excited by marks like that, then by all means go for it. But I'll do that with caution. All right, we are moving on with what is this topic? Reporting of results. So you need to know the grading process, know the grading and the reporting options, like then what options are available for you to use when you are reporting the results, and then complete the process efficiently and avoid pitfalls. All right, know how to effectively communicate the learner's results. Just as Evelyn has mentioned, she thinks that announcing the learner's results can motivate them. You can think otherwise, but you just look at the results. Because, and then again, for you also to determine if it's a good idea to announce the results in the classroom, you can do a survey in your class to find out from the learners. Do they think it's a good idea to announce the learners their marks, or to keep it a secret? And then you see the votes, and then you decide from that. Not just by what you feel and think, but also by what the learners also think. Right? That could be also another idea for you to know how to best communicate their results. Next, all teachers assign marks. So I mean, like, we all reporting results. Yeah, all teachers do assign marks. Grades are generally a combination of formative and summative assessment. Right? So that's what we are going for, not just summative and not just formative. It should be a combination of both. And grades are reported in the form of a report card. That's what we still do, right, in schools. That we use report cards. I think we still do that. And then grades are the formal communication between schools and parents and community about the learner's progress. So it's through this reporting, like when we give the report card, that the parents, the schools, and the community knows about how the learners are doing in the classroom. And then next, what do we have? The term grading implies. So combination of several, okay. We do have, we say the term grading, the term grade, because we report the learner's performance every term, right? And then we do know that it's a combination of several assessment. All right, that's what we are trying to do, and that's also what we are trying to do at UNAM as we are transforming the curriculum, that we do a number of assessment, like formative assessment, not just tests and assignments, but also other type of assessment throughout the year, and then combining it now with the examination. So those are some of the things that we have to do in our classrooms. But then again, your school will guide you. It has principles of how you should assess and what is contained or entailed within a grade. Okay, translating the results into some scales that has evaluative meaning. So when you have your scales, they should have some evaluative meaning. Like, for example, if a learner gets 90 to 100, what does that look like, or what does that mean? All right, and then you should make that available to the people who are reading the reports. And then reporting the result, you need to report the results in a formal way. Okay, not informal, in a formal way. And then for the most part, we always have report cards. Have report cards, for example, when you're reporting these results, the grades, the term grades. And then grading serves a variety of purpose, and to do good grading, the teacher must have this purpose in mind. So we have a number of purposes that comes with grading. Okay, for example, feedback to the learners, parents, and teachers. And then we also have the administrative purpose, and then the motivation purpose. So within this, feedback on the progress. How are they doing? What do they need to work on to improve? Also, for you as a teacher, what do you need to work on, what do you need to improve, or what do you need to continue doing. And then for the program itself, the school, like what do they need to change, what do they need to work on. And then also from, so there are a number of them. Okay, what do they need to keep working on as a point of also motivation, work on, and what do they need to continue doing, and how well are they doing. All right, so that's why we have different purposes that may come with grading and going through the results that you get. And then the rationale for assigning grades are, so how many rationale do we have? Okay, we are going to go through 5 rationale for assigning grades. So what are those 5 rationale? So we've got the first one is achievement relative to a fixed standard. Okay, and then right now it's already 3:24. We're not going to continue. We're going to stop here because it's 3:25, and I have a meeting at 3:30, so I need to prepare for that quickly. Just to get my thoughts and everything together before that class. So we're just gonna end here, and tomorrow's class we are going to start from this point. All right. Do you have any questions? Any questions? And I need some response, please.
No question, ma'am.
No question. Thank you, Dili.
No question.
Okay. Thank you, Regina. All right. No questions. Awesome. I think with that, we have come to the end of the lesson. I'll see you tomorrow at 1:30. Bye for now.